Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica, and I am the creator of Once Upon a Pesto. And today we will be talking about French food and recipes. And I am going to soon join, have joined me on the stage Sandrine. She is a French chef and living in London currently, and she is an expert in all things French. And so I'm really excited about this conversation. She is going to share all the ins and outs of what French food is like, some of the classic recipes, and really how the food ties into the culture. And so I will have her join me in just a second. And thank you so much for tuning in today. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. We're going to be talking about French food and recipes. Joining us is Sandrine. She is based in London, but she is a French chef, and she knows the the best of what is French cuisine. And you're thinking crepes, baguettes, croissants, you name it. She is the expert in all things French. So I'm really excited that she will be joining us here today. And just in a moment, she will join us shortly. And there she is. Hello, Sandrine. How are you today?
Hello, very well. Thank you. Thanks for organizing this. So lovely to be chatting about cooking, obviously, one of my favorite subjects.
Yes, and I was just telling everyone about you. You are in London, but you are the expert in all things French and French food, French recipes. So thank you so much, Sandrine, for joining today and sharing your expertise with us. This is going to be a great conversation. And first, Sandrine, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into cooking, and what was it like growing up in France, and then what took you to London?
Ha, long story. Well, as my accent will say anyway, I am definitely French. And I was born in the south of France. So we'll talk a lot about French cuisine, and I'll have the opportunity to explain all the differences between the various regions. But the common point with all the regions in France is that eating and cooking is really important. And my native region is certainly no exception. And so I was born in the south, and we've very lucky in that corner of France to have beautiful vegetables. We have gorgeous meats from the mountains just behind, but we also have obviously the Mediterranean Sea just in front of us. So we have gorgeous fish too. So it's really a region that is blessed with beautiful natural products. So so I had very early on an appetite for all of those products, of course, and I was passionate about cooking from a young age. And then I kept having that as a dream in the corner of my mind, very much a childhood dream, and then a teenager dream. And I always wanted to write a cookbook about all the cooking from that region, the wider Mediterranean region. But then life went on and I started a career in marketing and I did a lot of other things, but I kept my childhood dream somehow.
Oh.
And later in life, I just decided like 5 years ago to finally write that cookbook and to take cooking to a different level. So it's a sort of a personal reinvention. The pleasure of cooking, the pleasure of eating never left me, but then I decided to make it professional. And I became a certified chef and also a sommelier, by the way, but that's for later today. Let's not talk about it. And so that's it. And I've been extremely lucky to be able to cook professionally in various countries where I've lived. So I've just relocated from China to the UK following my husband. So everywhere I go, I would be guest chefing in various restaurants where chefs share my vision of food. And I give cooking classes. I do a lot of corporate workshops using cooking as a tool for team building and team training. Because cooking together is a wonderful activity to bond for people. And so that's it. That's my life and passion for food.
Not that's it. That's a lot, and so much passion and skill that you've grown throughout these years. Sandrine, let's first talk about when you were a kid. What is the French experience like? You mentioned, growing up in the South, the access to certain ingredients, but really, what is it when you sit down at a family meal? What is unique about that experience, compared to the other parts of the world that you've lived in?
Yes, well, actually, it's funny you mentioned sitting down around a table because that's something that I believe is very, very strong in the French culture around eating, is that it's an important affair. And you do sit down, and that's usually at least breakfast and dinner, families would sit down, and sharing food is a social experience as much as a sensory experience. And from having lived in many different countries, I think that's one point of singularity in the French lifestyle, broadly. There's also a sense of sharing the preparation, which I haven't seen absolutely everywhere else in the world. So that must be also a unique French touch, because once again, cooking is so important like I take my kids out to the marketplace, we choose ingredients together, we come back to the kitchen, they watch me as I cook. I've always done that, like I did with my grandmothers years ago. So those are important things. And there's a structure to the French meal also that is more of a ritual than in other countries. We would really often have a starter and a main, or starter, main, and dessert, even at home. So it's taken seriously. It's not a quick thing that you do because you have to eat and you need a functional meal. There's a lot more to it.
And that makes me wonder, you mentioned sitting down for breakfast, sitting down for dinner. So let's go through a day. What are, the classic foods and ingredients that are eaten? Let's start with breakfast and then we'll go lunch and dinner.
Well, that's one part when we would really have to differentiate it depending on the region of France, because it's that the French cuisine altogether would be that iconic, because you change regions, you change cuisines, very much so. There's such diversity among the French regions that it's difficult to have as a rule of thumb for the whole of France. Like typically in the north, people use a lot more butter, a lot more cream. That's a function of what is produced locally, obviously. And in the south, there's a lot more olive oil. And there's very much a fracture, north-south. Likewise, in the north, the cooking tends to be a lot richer. You use sauces, and in the south, and I'll mention Mediterranean cuisine many times, but there's a lot more vegetables and cooking without you using any frying, steaming, slow cooking. So different techniques, so different ingredients, different techniques. So that would, and there's a northern and a southern part very much, and then lots of real mosaic of individual regional cuisines. So the breakfast would be very difficult to describe depending on the region, and I think also modern life makes it varied. I'm not everywhere people do sit down and share breakfast together. So that's a hard one. But definitely dinner, I think, is an easier question to answer. Okay. And there are definitely several courses for dinner, typically. And that's not just one thing and then touch and go and everyone goes back to their occupation. There's a starter and a main, or a main and several sides, often a dessert. We with two feet France. So that would happen, and that's for everyone in the family to be ready on time, sit down together, and chat over dinner.
Wow. And so let's go through that. Starters, to name a few. What are the biggest French traditions in terms of starter dishes around dinner time?
All right. Well, I'll talk about my region. I was, once again, born in the south, born in Marseille, especially, more specifically. So typically we would have a lot of vegetables. And I cook very often a starter based on vegetables, whether they're raw or cooked. But it's health driven, but there's also a sense of making them tasty. And I'm a huge fan of vegetables, and I think they can be cooked in and you will certainly agree with me on this one, but I think they can be turned into really fun, tasty, yummy food. They don't have to be boring at all. So that's a staple at my house, certainly. And then there's always some protein. And I think France is very much behind in terms of plant-based meals, but
okay.
It's a growing trend, but it's still very much a minority in France. So we would have meat or fish very often. And that's most days of the week, I would say, for the majority of households. Now, I'm a little bit more on the plant-based side. I think my family is very much flexitarian, so we don't have fish or meat every day at all. It's probably once a week each. And there's always a dessert, because life is to enjoy.
What's your favorite dessert to make, and what's your favorite dessert to eat?
Wow. Well, I have a sweet spot for souffles. Very French, I know. So I'm a true stereotype for this one, but I love souffle because I love chocolate. My answer will be chocolate souffle. I think it's lovely to end the meal with something hot, especially now we are in winter time. And so I've always desserts that are served hot versus anything that's iced or even room temperature. So I would also like the crumbles. I mean, borrowing to my host country, the UK, crumbles are lovely, lovely desserts too, with a fruit base and then a topping that is crunchy. It's lovely. So
yeah. And Sandrine, I want to ask you also too. We talked about a little bit the techniques and how they vary, not only ingredients north to south, but techniques. So what are some techniques that you find yourself using as a chef most frequently that are unique and widespread among French?
Great. So everyone would have in mind the classic bœuf bourguignon, very well-known recipe, beef stew. That is a technique that I love. It's everything. It's relatively healthy. There's not a lot of fat in the recipe, It's very aromatic because there's an aromatic base of onions and garlic and carrots, and then of course it's called Boeuf Bourguignon for a reason. It's using quite a lot of wine from Burgundy, but of course the alcohol has evaporated by the end of the cooking process. So it's gorgeous in terms of flavors, but it's achieving that in a very healthy way. And there's a certain joy at putting a lot of ingredients in a cast iron casserole. Like I've got one with me actually here. This is the one that I'm using for.
Ooh, it's gorgeous.
For this type of slow cooked recipes. And you put all those gorgeous ingredients in the pot, and then you put it at a low temperature, you almost forget about it, and 5 hours later, you have a beautiful dish that is complete. There's vegetable proteins. So that's one of the techniques that I love, and it's actually, it can be done with only vegetables, like when I'm cooking vegetarian recipes. Instead of the beef, I would put root vegetables like parsnips, carrots, and adding mushrooms at the end, and it makes, once again, a complete dish that is, you know, full of aromas and flavors with relatively little effort. And now, oh, you can also see here in the corner my tagine dish, which is of course my Mediterranean heritage, and that's another beautiful way of cooking that is both, again, healthy and tasty. Because the principle of the dish is that you put a lot of things inside, you just sear the ingredients at the start of the process, but then you cover with the top, and there's a certain circulation of the air inside, and the steam that is created that there's a condensation process happening, and it keeps all the ingredients inside really moist and full of flavor, again without using very much fat at all. So again, healthy and tasty, no compromise.
And always delicious, and that's the key. You know, around the world, French food is known. Not only fashion, but food are things that I think of first when I think of France. And I want to ask you, you know, in terms of history, Sandrine, if you had to think back, how your knowledge of French food and in the history of France, how does that come about? You know, what influences from around the world are seen today in present day cuisine?
Well, that's a really, really good question. You know, France has a rich history of communication with a number of countries around the world, mostly Africa, obviously, also North America. So we've had imports of ingredients and techniques from those regions. Well, I studied a lot the Mediterranean cuisine, obviously, and that's my passion. So I know that just in that region, there have been so many processes of learning from one region to another. It's to the point that it's almost impossible to trace back one single recipe when you start in Provence, so the south of France, and you're wondering whether that recipe is actually originally from Italy or Greece or Morocco, or there, when you dig, there have been influences from one place, and then it's an ingredient from there, one spice from here, the technique is from several places, and that makes it's a beautiful, I think, history of sharing in humankind, and cooking is one thing that brings people together, really. And it's one example of how we can improve, you know, as almost as species, because we share, we care about feeding ourselves, and we learn from each other, even across borders over time. So, but I mean, you see, we're talking about Africa and having influences. I've got this dish here. the spices that we use even in modern French cuisine very much tell of the exchanges with also with Far East Asia, where also there was a French presence for many decades over the centuries. We've also brought back some of the spices from there, like star anise, cinnamon, vanilla, of course. But you can find influences from pretty much every other continent, which is a good thing, I believe. It's just
Definitely, I agree. And I'm also thinking too, when you're talking about all these things coming together in France, but then you think the influence of France on other places, you know, here in the States, and your own experience traveling in Asia and now in the UK. Sandrine, can you talk about how French food appears in other countries, and is it kind of true to the roots where it's coming from?
mostly yes. I mean, this is. I'm quite proud of the influence of the French together. I have to say that's something that we've really succeeded at, and a lot of what's really warming is that a lot of cooks would train themselves in France, would come to be trained in France still today, and it's been going on for centuries, and it's still the case today. So as a result, what is called French cuisine abroad is actually very true to French cuisine as far as I could see and taste.
Awesome.
Which is not always the case of other countries. Like I've lived in China for 5 years, and it's very well known that if you go to a Chinese restaurant overseas, like in France or the UK, you don't get 100% of the actual Chinese cooking experience. But it's not the same with French cuisine. That's lucky that it could export itself with quite faithfully.
Uh-huh.
So yes, but now it's still the French classical cuisine that is being executed abroad. I can tell it's the classic, beef fillet. So the bœuf bourguignon, beef bourguignon. So it's still very much the classic, and I'm curious to see how it evolves, because I think there's a real revolution now in France happening over the past decade, with more influences from abroad, with all the latest discoveries around health and also preserving the planet. We've talked about plant-based, etc. So I'm curious to see how the French cuisine evolves and how long it takes for that to reach other borders and to be reinvented in a proper way globally.
Great. And I want to ask, as a chef, this is probably the hardest question of all.
Okay.
What are your, tried and true, your favorite recipes to prepare? You talked about being proud of the French cuisine abroad and how it stayed faithful. If you had to claim, I am the best chef in these and these dishes, what would they be, Sandrine?
Wow, you're pushing my modesty. Well, I have to say the souffle again, because I've taught the recipe to many different audiences, even in China, where people were really intimidated by the idea of cooking a souffle. So I pride myself in saying that I can teach other people how to cook a souffle properly. And it's such a gorgeous dish, and there's a joy to seeing a beautiful souffle come out of the oven, all puffy, and so that's definitely one of my signature dishes, and it's both savory and sweet. So, and then it's always about the combination of ingredients and techniques, right? So I mentioned chocolate souffle. I should also mention the truffle souffle, because one of my favorite ingredients on the planet are black truffles, or white truffles for that matter. And so once again, I like to combine my favorite ingredients with my favorite techniques. So there would also be the truffle souffle. It's just gorgeous. But back to my Mediterranean passion for food, everything vegetable based, like the classic ratatouille, which is also famous worldwide
Yeah,
as a
the movie.
dish. That's lovely to cook, and lovely to eat, and gorgeous colors in the plate that tell you, when you watch a dish, you know already, you can know a lot of things about what it does to you, and this, this beautiful mixture of colors in a plate already tells you that it will be good for you. You've got a variety of nutrients in your plate, and then little things on the side. What I like to do as a chef is to add a few twists that are mine, and to take the recipes to new grounds and make them a little bit more seasonal or according to the mood of the day. So and that's when it's fun to cook. And that's, people who follow me on Instagram will be familiar with my little twists and additions. And of course you would see the occasional pesto
Yes.
topping up one of the dishes, of course. Adding a bit of crunch on a recipe, adding a little sauce, and the sauce doesn't have to be fat and heavy. I use a lot of yogurt-based sauces, or tahini, or even blending the pulp of a fruit or a vegetable and using that as a basis for a sauce, and that can transform a dish to avoid being bored with it because you've already cooked it. So hope that answers the question.
It definitely does. I want to ask you, what are, in making a souffle, you've taught so many people how to make it. I've never made it myself. So take us in a quick 5 secrets, or, kind of step by step. What is your fast and easy way to make a souffle?
I think as in every recipe, once you know what to do, nothing is difficult. So it's about, and usually 2 or 3 precise steps will make it a success or not. And so for the souffle, I would say having the right proportion of egg yolks and egg whites, and depending on the flavoring of the souffle, whether it's savory or sweet or what other ingredients you use, you have to adjust that proportion. So that's what I provide as a chef. I've got the experience to find the right balance. So that's one. Then the temperature of the oven, it should absolutely be enter the oven when it's at the right temperature, hot already, and not opening the door during the cooking process. I think that one is quite well known,
but tempting.
The souffle will go down. If you open the door of the oven, it will go down. So that requires patience. But those 2 are important ones. Then if you maybe the souffle is made up of a basis that gives the structure. So whether it's sweet or savory, you prepare it in a different way, sugar or not, of course. And then the fluffy part is provided by the egg white. So that's also making sure that the structure, what's the basis of it, is firm enough. So for savory souffles, that would be the white sauce. So it's some fat, flour, and a liquid. So typically in the classical French cuisine, that's butter, white flour, and milk. But you can make it a little bit lighter with using plant-based fat, soy milk, and a mixture of wholemeal and white flour. So you can twist it. And then for a sweet souffle, it will be what is called the crème pâtissière in the French pastry tradition. So, but that's also a mixture of fat, binding agents, and a liquid to make up for the structure. So it's, again, having the right proportions and then being patient with the cooking process.
From the professional herself.
Not that difficult, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you have probably refined your recipes over the years, and the experimentation I think is the key to that. That you're never, you're never settling. You're always pushing yourself to learn and try new things, and I find that fascinating.
Oh, well, but it's fun. Cooking is fun.
Hmm.
Um, it's and everyone has a kitchen, no matter how small it can be. You can always, anyone can experiment. So that's the joy of cooking. Yes.
Yes, and for those who prefer to cook without a cookbook, for those who prefer the cookbook, Sandrine, I want to open this time up to tell us about your cookbook.
Ha.
How that process was for you. You know, that was a lifelong goal, and you've achieved it, and it looks amazing. Mediterranean Cookbook. Tell us about it.
Thank you. Yes, it was my teenager dream come true, late in life, but hey, never too late. I really wanted to start with authentic Mediterranean recipes. So in that case, that was not me as a chef being creative and adding lots of twists and personal touches. I really wanted the authentic recipes, but making sure they were modern enough. So for every day. So it's not a cookbook only with fancy, sophisticated recipes. My intention was to give access to daily dishes, very much dishes that anyone can cook on a daily basis. Those are the recipes that I cook for my children, and I have three, so a busy man. But they are not overly time consuming. They are not overly technical. Therefore, every day to bring all the goodness of the Mediterranean cuisine, which is officially the healthiest on the planet, certified by some very clever Harvard scientists. The healthiest way of eating. So it's very, very healthy. It's tasty. I mean, even fussy eaters, children, like it. Who doesn't like a beautiful Italian dish of pasta, or the Greek salads, or the roasted meats with lots of vegetables and herbs and spices. This is an easy to like cuisine. And the last point is that it's fun to cook. So what isn't there to like? So yes, so that was my first edition of the book. 5 years ago already, and I'm currently working on a new edition that will be digital. So so those who are interested in that can contact me on Instagram for when it's available, which should be in a couple of weeks only. I'll be more than happy to send the link, and I'm having fun fine-tuning some of the recipes, adding new recipes, and improving some of the instructions, and just fine-tuning. But it's organized by season, so so that you know where to go at any point in time for ingredients that are at the best of their nutritional value, and it's obviously better for the environment, better for your wallet. There's cooking seasonal is the starting point anyway. So it's an easy book for every day.
For beginners to advanced.
Yes, absolutely for beginners, no problem. Yeah.
Great. This is fantastic. And congratulations on all your achievements, Sandrine. I admire your work, and also agree with all of the things you said about the Mediterranean cuisine. It's my favorite. You live in it. It's just wonderful.
Thank you. Yes, well, it's great to see travels, and yes, I can see some of the comments of people who are watching us at the moment saying that I also use that dish and that.
And going back to what you said earlier, everyone relates to the experience of cooking and food, and so it's this universal language that, you're in London. You grew up in France. I'm in the States. We have people watching from Germany, from you name it, all over the world. And, it's this unifying experience, which I think is amazing.
Yes, absolutely. This is something that brings people together. We all have to eat 3 times a day, about 3 times. more for me. But and why not make it fun and pleasant? And so yes, yes.
Absolutely. So, Sandrine, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a wonderful conversation, delicious conversation. I've learned some things, and I hope everyone watching has learned as well. And for those who are watching, just tuning in, I'm going to be sharing this to Instagram videos so that you can watch from start to finish if you missed any section. And then also, I encourage you to ask questions, comment, and tag Sandrine. She would be happy to answer those questions and get back to you. And so, Sandrine, last but not least, tell us how they can find you.
Yes, well, on Instagram is a very easy way to reach me, and please do ask questions. Indeed, I love questions, and I happily give advice on this or that recipe and give extra ideas for variation. So Sandrine DLB, so SANDRIDLB. Come and find me, and I post almost every day about what I cook. At home, real life. And hoping to inspire everyone to just try new things, try new tastes, new techniques. So please be in touch, and thank you so much for organizing this. It's been a pleasure, and I love that we share the same passion for food and yes, the same love for fresh, tasty ingredients. We've exchanged a lot, and it's great to get to have this discussion in person. Yeah. Almost.
And if I'm ever in the UK, or if we ever meet in France, that would be such a wonderful experience.
It could happen. It's a small planet.
That's true. Thank you so much, Sandrine. It's been a pleasure to have you. I really appreciate your time and sharing with us today, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
And you. Bye. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.